video is self-sponsored by Itero Gaming. I would love for you guys to try out our new artificial intelligence drafting coach. You can try it completely free with no download by going to itero.gg, typing in a draft, type in your account information, and get a recommendation based on that information. Now, there's also a link to the Itero Discord on the site, and you'll be able to submit questions for future interviews there. I'd love to get in as many as possible. Welcome to the interview, Flora.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we're gonna start with our stereotypical question, which is, what are you doing now, and how did you get here?
So right now I'm the data analyst for Astralis, and I'm working part-time for them. And basically I'm working on all things scouting, tracking our performance, and all things data for Astralis. And so I started being an analyst something like 5 years ago. At first it was just like watching, like it was a small team. I was just watching scrims with the coach. We were debriefing together. I was ending my computer engineering studies at the time. And so year by year, I really noticed how much I could leverage data way more than my game knowledge, actually, and in a way more impactful manner. And so I went from teams to teams, from first going from some French teams. Like I went on Gen side, then I was on Fenerbahce for a year, and afterwards I was scouted by Origin, and which became later on Astralis, and I stayed there for 3 years now.
Awesome. So I really want to dig into that part at the beginning that you said that you're part-time. So of all the analysts I've spoken to, you're the first one I've spoken to who isn't doing it as a full-time gig. Could you maybe just dig into a bit of detail around how you find balancing your day-to-day 9-to-5 job and being an analyst for a pro team?
Yeah. So one thing I did like quite fast was like I realized as a computer scientist, I could work in any field. And so at the time, it was 4 years ago, I saw that PandaScore was hiring. And PandaScore is working in esports as well. We sell stats and odds on different esports competitions. And so one thing that helps me a lot is having my colleagues on the day-to-day side be able to understand what I do at night, let's say. And so it's great for me to not have any kind of isolations regarding to that. And also, it's really important for me to be organized and really crystal clear to my teams, about what I can do and what I cannot, just because of how much time I have in a day. And so once this is clear, I just try to be as available as possible to then say, I can do this, and this will be done by this date. Basically, I have to be able to forecast a bit how much time everything takes me. And just staying organized and going day to day, week by week like that.
Awesome. Yeah, I can relate to that first point around about having your colleagues understanding what you're doing. I remember when I was leaving my job as a consultant, I would have to not just explain what esports was, but I'd have to explain what gaming and League of Legends and all the rest is, right? So you're a massive advantage that the guys and girls you're working with already understand pretty well what's going on behind the scenes. Do you find that it's useful being in a career, a 9-to-5 job that is so close to your esports career? Do you get to learn some stuff and think, wow, that would be really cool, I can do that with Astralis? And same way with Astralis, do you learn things that you can then take into your normal 9-to-5?
Yeah, I guess because I grew in both jobs in different manners. At PandaScore, I interact way more with people there since I'm at the office with them. And among them, there's a data science team. And so I'm not a data scientist myself, but interacting with them really made me understand how the field worked and what could be at play and in esports and for teams especially. And so it gave me a lot of ideas to start to implement and so on. And Astralis gives me some working for them gives me some insight about what matters in esports that my colleagues don't necessarily have. And being able to have both these discussions is really interesting to me.
Awesome. Yeah. So PandaScore are very much involved in the betting side, which I find was kind of where I originally came from, because I found it very useful to try and predict the results of a game and then use that to try and then make better decisions in the game. For instance, a team has got a lower chance of winning because they've given up a Baron or a Dragon or whatever. Therefore, I know that you can tell the team, you can't give up this Dragon or Baron because it reduces your win chance too much, or whatever it may be. Now, I'm interested in speaking about your relationship with the coaches and the players within Astralis, because a lot of the guys that I've spoken to so far talk about their day-to-day relationships and how they're always working with the coaches kind of like constantly, right? They're always on Discord discussing the latest thing. But obviously, given that you can't really be doing that all the time, how do you manage that relationship with players and coaches when you're trying to tell them things from the data?
To be honest, first thing first, I don't interact that much with the players. So what I do is rather interact with the coaches first, and the players come to me sometimes when they have questions regarding, I don't know, new patches, changes, and so on. But aside from that, as I said, I can't do as much as the full-time analyst, I guess. So I do some, how to say it? I have like my habits, like regular work that I do, that I don't really need that much anymore to interact with the coaches with. Like I have some kind of reporting to do to them. And so what we discuss is when some improvements are needed, some explanation is needed, some new, when I add some new things to the reports that were not there previous times. But yeah, I try to have it as organized, automatized, and regular as possible, so that I'm not needed when discussions occur, because everything is all there and all clear. It's just having everything always done the same way, so that people know where things are and why they are presented that way.
Right. So consistent automated reporting. And then if any questions or changes to those reports are needed, you can then do that in your own time once you finish with your PandaScore work.
Yep.
That makes sense. Now I'm quite interested because I'm signed up to your PandaScore email, right? I don't think it's yourself, but someone within your team, I think your data science team, sends out a regular email that says like, what is the latest technology changes happening within esports and gaming? And the sort of stuff they send is really sophisticated. But I notice there's a big gap between that sort of research and what's actually happening in teams, and not just yourself, I mean across the board. Do you think there is a big gap between what the very best people in data science could achieve and what actually teams are currently doing?
Yeah, well, of course, what I see day to day is like regular companies have teams of data scientists, while teams have either like one part-time analyst all alone doing everything, or maybe one full-time analyst, but same thing. Like, I don't think anyone has a crew of analysts with someone dedicated to data science yet. So, of course, anyone full-time data scientist will be able to achieve more than someone who has to do like scouting, like patches analysis, like some day-to-day raw data stuff, and then on top of it, some long-term studies on what's good and what's not. So, and yeah, what my team does regarding this email is that every week, they do what they call a journal club. So one data scientist will present to the others a new paper from any kind of journal that was interesting to them. And they are trying to have this newsletter of them making a recap of what they said and what was their outcomes of all of these papers.
Yeah, it's super interesting just to see what a very technical team would start looking at if they were looking into it. I haven't actually found a team within the LEC that is doing the equivalent of it, but it's interesting to know that that sort of research is happening. Now, I'd love to go into the more the side on people who are trying to break into the industry and really helping them. So do you have any tips for people who are maybe recent graduates who have no experience, haven't got any contacts, and just really want to become an esports analyst and they have no idea where to start?
Yeah, I'm often asked by newcomers as well to this kind of question. And my first advice is always like, just start. And by that, I mean, there are so many teams that don't have that much of a coaching staff, would be really happy to have some more hands to dig into the data, to anything really. And you never learn faster than being on a team and seeing what the needs of a team are and discussing with actual coaches and players. So, and even if you don't know anything yet, they will be really clear about their first needs. And what you need to do from there is also to follow what interests you and what matters to you. Because since there are not that many analysts, people don't really know what to expect from one. So when you see that one part of analysis matters to you, you will instantly bring more value to the team. And it can be anything really, like it can be patches analysis, it can be solo queue trends, it can be drafts analysis, and so on. And it can also be like about how you develop your game knowledge, how about you develop the way you code, how you can go really different ways. Just making yourself a specialist on one thing can really help you bring way more value than anyone else on that one part of the field.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. And do you think that it's important that people who do this are fairly diverse, not diverse, but complete in the way that they're producing whatever it is they're doing? So, for instance, is it a bad idea just to do a data report, or is it a bad idea or a better idea to then turn that into a full-blown presentation where you can walk through different areas? Do you have kind of a best practice on how people can present this when they're trying to speak to teams and say, hey, look what I can do?
I mean, the better the presentation, the easiest it is for people to look at it and get what your point is. So, yeah, of course, if you give someone a raw spreadsheet and you're saying like, yeah, my outcome is in cell C10, great. Just a bit of presentation and being able to walk through it, people never hurts.
A quick break to remind you that this video is self-sponsored by iTero Gaming. I would love for you guys to try out our new artificial intelligence drafting coach. You can try it completely free with no download by going to itero.gg, typing in a draft, type in your account information, and get a recommendation based on that information. Enjoy the rest of the interview.
Yeah. Another thing is that don't be afraid to also put your work out there. Like for me, Twitter, for example, is a good place to start building like an address book. Not necessarily to get famous or whatever, but to get noticed by the right people, to then like get a few contacts first, like people who like your first tweets, maybe the ones you can ask for feedback later on. And even if people don't like it, having it out there with first feedbacks can really help you tremendously later on. Like the way I got hired by Origin 3 years ago was me getting myself out there with EU Masters data and so on. And just, I was done with my year at Fenerbahce, so let's just start publishing something, And the guy who recruited me for tryouts didn't even necessarily look at my EU Masters data, actually. But when he looked for who is an analyst, who is LFT and so on, my profile came faster because I was putting myself out there and was saying, hey, I'm looking for something. I'm showing I can produce work as well. So was easier to find and then get into the next phases.
Awesome. That's really good advice. And I'm interested to hear. You may not have considered it, but let's say that we're in a communist society and you'll get paid whatever the same. So, if you could then work full time on Astralis, right? What would you spend your extra time doing? Is there something that you think, oh, there's this awesome project that I would really like to do? Obviously, I don't have the time to do it, but if I was working 9 to 5 on this is the sort of project that I would start building.
Yeah, I guess because all of what I'm doing is kind of basic automation and data analysis for now, and we have access to so much data. Like we have access to the state of a game really deeply. Like the data you see at the end of a game, like on OPGG and whatnot, the damage, like the items, like even some stuff you'd see, like how much HP, armor, and so on a player has, where they are on the map, and everything. We have it every second of a game. And so I'd like to build more of like what I'm really interested is like scouting the game through data, and like in certain places or pattern or like setups, how do people behave, or do team organize themselves. Like I've been more and more, I'm not at all a sports person, culturally speaking, but nowadays I'm a football fan just because they put so many content about set pieces and how teams organize and whatnot. And I think given you frame the game well enough, you could gain wonderful insights about how team and players behave or should behave in certain positions. And yeah, I think it would take a lot of time to implement that. But if I had this time, I would explore it at least.
Awesome. That sounds really interesting. And a common issue that people raise with me, because I do a lot of my research in solo queue, high elo solo queue, but still solo queue, is that they say that it's not equivalent to a pro game, which is of course is true, right? The communication and the play style is completely different, but there's still some rules that can be taken away. Do you feel like a tool like that is something that would, because it's so specific to kind of the micro fighting around, let's say a dragon pit or a baron pit, that actually you couldn't use solo queue data at all, and you would have to just use the stage games because they just play so differently?
Well, this detailed data, we only have it for pro games, but assuming we would have it for solo queue as well, I guess that maybe it would be interesting for laning, because it's still some kind of isolation that could be maybe compared to what pro teams do. But yeah, later in the game, I'm not sure, because you have this disorganized play that, well, rewards some stuff you don't want to see in pro play at all. So yeah, just earlier in the game, why not? Like trade patterns and how people behave in lane and so on could be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think like jungle pathing, for instance, tends to be something that players do automatically, and it doesn't really differentiate that much depending on pro and solo queue. So that is something, obviously, like you say, the data we get in solo queue is pretty sparse. So we wouldn't be able to do the same level of analysis, but it would be interesting to see how close the jungle paths would be between a solo queue on the same champion and a pro on the same champion.
Yeah, I mean, for jungle paths, some junglers really take the time to, get to master their champions and gain these 3, 4, 5 seconds that actually really matter in pro play. And yeah, that could be interesting to see. But yeah.
Awesome. Do you have any resources that you would point people towards when they're saying that they want to become an analyst and learn more about it, wherever that's specific to technical skills or about game knowledge or whatever it is?
For technical skill, I've made some tutorials in the past. If people want to check it out, it's Araya on Medium. I've made a few articles. There are your, of course, videos as well to start with the API. I would really recommend people that are interested in learning how to code, how to do visual representation of stats, to not necessarily look at league-focused content, but broadly code tutorials and how people just present stats in general, because it's all the same, and then you apply it to league. And so I would follow tutorials, and every time you learn about something new, you can ask yourself, okay, now I have this, I know how to get League of Legends data thanks to Jack tutorial. Like, how can I merge the two, Like, and every step you learn something, how can I apply it to a simple League of Legends problem? And just do it brick by brick. And just don't try to go at the big, let's recreate OPGG from the start or something, like just do one step at a time, and then it will all work together when you keep growing and learning.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't actually bribe all the guests to bring up my own interview because you are the second in a row, so I have to caveat that. But yeah, no, awesome. I'll also get the link for your own tutorials as well, so I can put them below for people to find nice and easily.
Cool.
And with that, I'd like to move on to some of the questions we've had through the Discord. And I think this one's good. You may have seen it because it came in about 5 minutes before we joined the call. So it's what sort of data do you not have available but would really like to have?
Chinese data. And by that, I mean not only LPL, which you can get through some ways, and we'll get it at some point through LOL, the LOL data portal as well for pro teams. But LOL, Chinese super server data as well, is completely blocked right now, unless you are Chinese and have access to some app and so on. And this could be interesting because you always see these crazy builds and videos coming from the support server and so on. Apart from that, it's really some niche data points I guess, because we get so much already, as I said, this 1 frame per second data. So this one is pretty good already. I could complain about not getting all of the spells cooldowns for one player. We only get summoner spells and ultimates, but that's so much already. That's so cool already. I know one thing that is actually really lackluster coming from Riot is their game data, static game data. Go have fun, calculate the damage a spell will do with a given build without spending so much time on a spreadsheet, making sure you're right on everything, and then you have to double check on the training tool because damn, I forgot about this thing stacking and so on.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty crazy spreadsheets that people have open sourced to do damage tracking per item and build and all that stuff, and those things are insane.
It's crazy the amount of work that is required from these people for free just because we don't have actual game data. Why?
Right, exactly. So those are really interesting ones. For me personally, it would be being able to get solo queue account names for pro players. I know that a lot of them are available, but they on purposely will find new accounts and do all sorts of tricks
that's
to make them
part
hard to find.
of the job, to find them. And we are actually happy as well to have our own being hidden. So that's two sides of a coin.
Yeah, I know why teams do it. It's just for me, it's so frustrating trying to track players when they change their name every other week.
Yeah, LOL pros are doing a great job for that, but so many accounts are not tracked yet.
Yeah, exactly. So another question from the Discord, and that this is to do with imposter syndrome. So do you feel and do you think being part-time maybe even emphasizes imposter syndrome for you?
Not really. Well, imposter syndromes always exist at a certain degree, I guess. But you have to build your ego in some way. For me, it was always when I published some examples of data on Twitter and seeing how much praise I got for some stuff. I was like, I can share it because it's not that much. Like I was using that as an ego boost a bit. Also, one thing I consider is like when I was hired by Astralis 3 years ago, um, there was a tryout phase that I won, and since then I've always tried to get better than that day. Always split by split. How can I get better? What more can I bring to the team, and so on. And so, if I'm better than what I was then, it means something, and that's how I fight it a bit. Like, okay, how much better was I from yesterday, and what is my plan from becoming better once again? And always having one thing in mind, like, what more can I bring to the team that I'm not today? And actually, it's rather something I'm proud of, like being able to have a full-time job and being in the LEC. Like at no point my coaches or anyone said like, yeah, no, we need someone full-time, even if it's paying more or whatever. Like, no, they kept me and they were like, yeah, it's enough. She's doing enough, even if she's only working like asynchronously with the team.
Awesome, well done. That is quite the accomplishment. And kind of funny, running back to this conversation around about only being the only part-time analyst. Do you think that we're kind of coming to the end of the time when teams can afford to only have one part-time analyst? Do you think maybe in, let's say, 2, 5, 10 years time, every team will, as a minimum, require one, at least not 2 or 3 different analysts? Or do you actually think that things are still pretty stable and teams can continue to go from strength to strength without having to recruit more people on the data side?
I think it depends how many teams decide to invest, because it leaves a different amount of team behind, Like, I know that for sure I'm not able to do as much as someone who's full-time, or a teams of analysts full-time, or whatever, I'm not delusional on that. And so if only one team is putting in the money, like the other nines are all fine being behind that one team, maybe, But if like more than half of a league is starting to do it, then the other ones will have to make that choice as well. It's kind of like players' salaries and so on. At some point, you have to pick it up to stay relevant in the league, and that's why I said earlier as well that I was starting to like football as well. It's like football teams realized it at some point, and now they have analysis department as well, with really well-rounded teams, and like some play patterns and some recruitments and so on really come from these departments, and are putting them ahead of a competition that is not doing it properly or at all yet.
Yeah, precisely, right. And that a lot of that will come down to things like how much more investment will go in, because if people aren't aware, the economy is having a bit of a rough time, right? So that means spending on things like esports teams goes down in priority, and investment goes down, etc. So it may tighten a couple of wallets when it comes to spending on analysts and players.
And I think also teams have the wrong approach right now in esports regarding analysis, because they treat us as far as I know for the others as well, as freelancers that are signed for a year or a few, but like really you have an end date on your contract. And so how much do you want to invest on someone or a team for something that will move teams as soon as the contract is finished? Is someone else's trying to poach the analyst, let's say this way. And so that's why as well sports are ahead. It's because they have their own analysis departments and their own framework, and if one name leaves, it's not making the team lose its analysis identity. It's really separated, and that's so like what should be a normal approach. We are not players. We are not athletes. It's something that should be like core to the team, the way, like way more like on the side of a general management and so on side of things, of a long-term vision, rather than on the player and even coach side.
Right, so closer to marketing or finance or whatever it might be. You're a support function to provide rather than a name brand that should be kind of jumping between teams and trying to get big buyouts.
Yeah, we are. Most of us don't really have brands, and it's not at all the goal of this thing. It's so. Yeah, I think the vision is broken here because analyst just popped up as some part of the staff that was not really clearly identified yet, and so was just treated as coaches from the start.
That's a really interesting point of view that I haven't actually heard before since speaking to analysts. So I appreciate that. Now I'm interested in knowing that I assume that League of Legends is one of your favorite games, if not your favorite game. But let's say that you became very interested in Valorant or CS:GO or whatever it may be, and decided to make a career switch over to an analyst for one of those teams. How transferable do you think it would be for you to then move what you have learned for League and then apply it to a new game, whatever it may be?
Oh, very, very transferable, I think, because what I've learned is a lot of how to, first of all, extract and organize my data and how to present it in a like usable way to coaches. And so the content of a game doesn't matter that much in the end. And so this is something that can be asked and taught by the coach to the analyst, I think. Yeah, there's not much I would need, I think, to step it up apart from I can actually starting to play these games. I think I'm level 3 in Valorant. But no, I actually even follow some Valorant analysts because they are starting to put really good insights and data and so on. And yeah, no, it would be quite easy for sure.
Awesome. So this brings me on to another question that came from the Discord, but in a similar manner, which is to do with how much you feel the skill requirement. Let's imagine far left is you only understand the game and you're not at all technical, as in you can't code, you don't know anything about data visualization. And then the other side is I'm very technical, I understand all coding and I can create databases, but I don't understand the game at all. Where do you think the perfect analyst should sit on that spectrum? Or do you think it changes depending on team and role and who else is in the team, etc.?
I think that these days you need someone who's really technical because of what we are given it's really raw data and so on. So you'd need someone to be able to handle all of this data. And like, I think how to say it, because I really don't consider, and maybe this is where my imposter syndrome is really showing. I really don't consider my game knowledge that high, but I consider that I can really discuss what the team needs to be shown, and just communication being actually more important than game knowledge in itself. And yeah, just understanding the key principles is kinda enough, I guess, rather than all of the game really niche intricacies and so on. But you absolutely need, well, in Astralis, it's more the coaches that have this deep understanding of the game, and I think use way better in that way my data than what I could do. But since my job is to present it so that they can use it, I think I don't have to have this deep knowledge,
Yeah, so a basic understanding, right? You need to know what a dragon is. You need to know what a baron is. You need to know the effects of these things in a sort of a base level. But there's no need for you to be a grandmaster player who can do it yourself.
Yeah, luckily.
Right. Don't worry, I haven't spoken to an analyst who's above gold yet. So
perfect. We're good.
Yeah, we're fine on that. I'm very interested in hearing more about you, about your opinion on the presenting of the data. And I wondered if I was a new analyst who was just working my very first gig in whatever team, and I said to you, "Hey, I've got my first presentation to a coach coming up. I need some tips on how to lay it out, how to approach the conversation, those sort of things. What sort of things would you give as advice to a sort of a new up and coming analyst?"
Your data always need to have a goal. Like, don't show numbers just to show numbers. Like, what are you trying to prove? Where do you want to have a discussion? Like, for example, if you want to look at solo queue new trends, why do you think this champion is becoming OP on this patch? Or like, if you're doing scouting, like, I don't care about the damage percentage of a team. I want to know what are their strengths and weaknesses, and and from that, what are the threats, what are the opportunities you can get playing against this team, And so, yeah, your presentation must really bring something to the table. It's not about just showing nice curves and nice numbers and so on. Just, yeah, bring information, and we don't care if there's a number in this information, just bring information. And then you can show the numbers if you have not managed to convince people yet,
Yeah, that's really great. And then on the flip side, do you see any red flags or sort of big issues or mistakes that analysts make? So an example that I've seen occasionally is it's very obvious that they haven't rehearsed the presentation before they're talking to you, and they're kind of jumping between different places, and it's like, oh wait, no, I need to talk about this, then this, then this, and you're like, you need to go out there and have even just a dry run on your own or to a friend first before you then go and approach a coach and say, okay, can you look at my presentation?
Yeah, that's one for sure. Another one would be like, yeah, having useless stuff as well. Like, sometimes people will use 15 slides for what could have been one or two, and yeah, don't make me lose my time. uh like, people don't have that high of an attention span in esports. Depends. um yeah, and just if you suck at design, just stall one on the internet, steal one on, on the internet, that, like, it doesn't matter. Just make it clean and get to the point. And yeah, so yeah, I'm going into advices again instead of red flags, but
Yeah, it's the same thing, just
yeah,
on
same thing
a
in the end.
different a
Yeah,
different angle, right?
yeah.
Awesome, good stuff. So the question that we always close out the interview with is, what is your favorite statistic in League of Legends?
Yeah. As I said at the start, to you privately at the start, I'm quite bad at choosing this kind of stuff. One thing I've started to do actually is stop saying damage and gold and blah 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 by death, but instead by life. That's something I actually came to discussion just talking with a data scientist at PandaScore, because not only when someone has a perfect game, it screws a bit what you're doing, but also by life, it kind of frames better what you're doing according to the opportunity, at some point. So yeah, and then I try to do it like it's the same kind of stuff, but by base as well, like, or on the contrary, by laning, let's say, but by presence on the map, contrary of. And this can be by def, like a base could be because of a def or because of recalling, but like how much do you achieve when you go from base to the map to do something. But
Got it.
yeah, no
So
specific
right,
in mind.
yeah. So like opportunity cost of basing, and if you caught the next wave, do you lose? How much do you lose, and what items
Yeah, yeah,
spike do you
yeah.
able to hit?
And
Those sort of
how
things.
much time do you like on the map, and what do you do of this time, and so on. Yeah.
I really like the first one of how much damage or how much whatever do you do per life, because it's going to save me a lot of NAs that are going to come up when
exactly.
inevitably you try dividing it
Yeah.
by 0 because someone's managed to get through the whole game. So that's a great way of putting it, and it makes, I don't know, it's like a nicer spin on the stat as well, because it's like how much did you achieve whilst you're alive, rather than saying
Exactly.
what did you achieve per your death. So yeah, love those. Good stuff. Do you have a Twitter or anything else that you want to plug before we close?
My Twitter is lol_araya, like it's written on the screen. And yeah, that's kind of it. I don't tweet that much, but my DMs are always open if you have any questions and so on regarding analysis, how to get started, if you want some feedback as well. I don't answer fast, but I try to do. That's that's about it.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much. I really appreciate you. It is almost 9 p.m. your time, so I thank you again for coming out on a Friday night to chat with me.
No problem. It was my pleasure. Thank you for the interview.
No problem. Speak to you soon.